James Gunn is the writer-director equivalent of the world's most prolific clown. I trust him to come up with good material and could rely on him to entertain my children, but I just can't take him seriously. And he doesn't have a key to the cellar. He's got the type of filmography that puts me in an awkward position. I can find so much to criticize about his work, and yet I cannot deny that I've enjoyed pretty much all of it. Which is where I must once more broach the divide between subjective and objective criticism, because some people either dismiss or outright reject the idea that beauty could be anything but, in the eye of the beholder. Fair enough. Our life experiences and core values influence how we see art, meaning that a truly objective review is theoretically possible if it were written by a robot. We need to put this fallacy to rest and burn the remains, and take care of the next of kin for good measure. Both subjective and objective reviews are the easiest things to make. I like that. Boom. Subjective. This movie is 99% ambient house noise and shots of unassuming furniture. Boom. Objective. Expressing feelings or facts will only get you so far. It's in how substantive the criticism is that determines the merit of the review. Whether the commentary is insightful and grounded in references to the actual work, or just offhand remarks and basic observations makes all the difference. To anyone who paid attention to what they watched or read or heard, it will be immediately apparent if the review is robust or hollow. So, while I can both rip into Gunn for his storytelling shortcomings and sing his praises for tailoring his films to the preferences of my sugar-addled 14-year-old monkey brain, the same is true in reverse. I think he's crafted some genuinely inspired and worthy cinematic moments, and his films are riddled with creative decisions I personally detest. But you, hopefully, didn't come here for an emotionally incontinent rant or to listen to me recite trivia for 5 minutes. You, hopefully, came to hear me say something. With the ongoing epidemic of reviewers talking without saying anything, I'm doing my best to contribute to a discussion, which, when it comes to James Gunn, is like presenting a lecture on nutrition to a bunch of 5-year-olds playing in a ball pit. But I'm going to anyway because I've got something to say, damn it. I liked The Suicide Squad, and I also didn't like it. You see how far subjectivity gets us? It just does not grow corn. To reiterate, I thoroughly enjoy The Suicide Squad, so much so that I watched it 3 times in the same week, with and without company. I love the aesthetic, I think the characters are well-rounded and individual, and it gave me plenty of reason to laugh. But the premise is nonsensical from the start, the plot looks like a meth head's attempt at keeping a journal, and, to address the prime topic of this video, it has a critical flaw which, since my second viewing, has soured the whole experience for me. The Suicide Squad has a morality problem. You might think me silly for criticizing a movie about supervillains for lacking a moral compass, but my issues go beyond the concept at hand. It's not just that we're following bad guys who have been strong-armed into doing good, even though mopping up the American government's mess does not fit that description. It's that the movie handles complex character motivations with respect and foresight in some regards, only to fail spectacularly in other regards you'd think it would have figured out. Like a 5th grader who scored 100% on his World War II history test but somehow came to the conclusion in his essay that 6 million wasn't enough. I don't know what James Gunn himself believes, besides that entertainment value supersedes writing quality, but his work is obviously not above shoehorning political talking points in regardless of whether they gel with the story or not. Such as in episode 8 of Peacemaker when, right after the bombastic fight scene but right before the awkward Justice League cameo, the alien parasite criticizes humanity for ignoring climate change and treating minor inconveniences as assaults on our freedom.
Screw your freedom.
The question being, what purpose do these ideas serve within the narrative? Sure, the butterflies moved to Earth because their planet had been depleted of clean air and drinkable water, meaning that their criticism of humanity falls flat in the face of our continued efforts to conserve and improve environmental conditions, except for Asia. But the theme of humans being too stupid to properly govern themselves is only brought up now, in the final episode, and has nothing to do with Peacemaker's character arc, no matter how hard the show tries to frame the two as resonant. Outside the narrative, these ideas speak to a growing trend of our hobbies being hijacked in order to push partisan propaganda onto people who don't question what they're seeing and hearing, or, even, are happy to abandon escapism entirely in order to win brownie points in an increasingly unhinged race to the bottom. And I'm not one to scoff at art which covers serious issues, but that's on the condition that those issues have a place in the story being told. Want to comment on civil rights era racism? Green Book and Mississippi Burning are great movies. Want to weave Christianity into challenging, thought-provoking stories? Look no further than Silence and The Last Temptation of Christ. And for examples of films that meaningfully incorporate issues of mental health into their plots, The Father and Primal Fear each raise the bar in their own unique ways. Those are all films with messages, and they respect the audience's capacity to make up their own minds about what to interpret from those messages. It's when the homicidal aliens start lecturing humanity on immigration and the proper exercise of our rights that I object. And, to circle back around to the Suicide Squad, the inclusion of a Cuban-style revolution doesn't actually add anything to the plot, besides a gag wherein an entire camp of guerrilla fighters is executed without their leader noticing it. That clown analogy is growing stronger by the second. Early in the movie, Rick Flag encounters the resistance in the Corto Maltesian jungle and makes allies of them. The rest of the squad only meet them later, after James Gunn's take on a Far Cry 3 outpost liberation, and from there onwards their participation in the story is minimal. During the climax, in between the Jotunheim fight and the Starro boss battle, some revolutionaries burst into the regime's office and gun down the government officials inside before assuming control. If you've seen the Suicide Squad, then you might have forgotten the scene even took place on account of how brief it is, but it is significant to the film's overall ethical folly. The revolutionaries confront the generals at gunpoint saying, "We the people of Corto Maltese are taking control of the government, stand down." The president then shouts an expletive while reaching for his hip, leading the fighters to mag dump them. Then, the next time we see the revolutionaries, they're on TV celebrating the fact that Corto Maltese will finally have democratic elections again after a 90-year authoritarian regime. Now, don't get me wrong, authoritarianism is bad, but bloody revolutions are no better. Historically speaking, slaughtering the powers that be in the name of a people's revolution does not turn out well in the long run. It's certainly popular in modern culture to invoke ideas and phrases from the French Revolution, for example, but that just goes to show how ignorant people are of the direct implications of a violent overturning of the status quo.
Does anybody here know what happened to the people who did not get on board with the French Revolution? Say it louder. Say it louder. That is the message we need to send. We are serious. This is not a joke. I am tired of seeing my people be genocided by every definition of the word.
The Suicide Squad's Corto Maltese revolution subplot is not given the gravity it deserves, but it does serve as a microcosm of Western culture's perception of revolutions. It's a small group of scrappy and defiant proletarians, led by a woman, using quick and severely violent action to usher in a new age of prosperity for the allegedly downtrodden. It has no place in the broader narrative, and will either be forgotten for how minor of a plotline it is, confuse those who don't think for themselves, be celebrated by people who think this is what justice looks like, or all of the above. But that's not actually the film's critical flaw. After all, a red nose alone does not complete a clown costume. No, the fluffy wig, white face paint, and hysterical dance moves are all encapsulated in how the movie deals with Rick Flag, leader of Team 1 and the only non-supervillain in the Suicide Squad.
I joined the military to serve my country, not to be its puppet.
As a war veteran appointed to lead the squad by Amanda Waller herself, Rick Flag holds a special place in this narrative. He is the only squad member not serving his own immediate interests, and the only one for whom the revolutionaries might harbor any goodwill. He is a leader, patriot, and, after his nail-biting fight against Peacemaker, a martyr. For context, the squad was sent to Corto Maltese under the impression that they would be shutting down Project Starfish, an operation consisting of various degrees of illegal experimentation and sci-fi atrocities. The real mission, however, was for Peacemaker to erase any and all traces of the US's involvement in Project Starfish, because, in an unshocking turn of events, the American government was spending taxpayer money on illegal research in a country hostile to Western interests. This was an admittedly compelling revelation in the movie. Just when you thought the squad was totally aligned in their goals and on the verge of success, Peacemaker pulls a gun on Flag and tells him that he cannot allow news of America's role in the operation to get out to the press. Flag insists that the public deserves to know, but Peacemaker believes that, by suppressing the information, he is doing his country a greater service.
They experimented on children! That information gets out, it causes an international incident.
The ensuing fight is rough and highly gripping, leading to a tragic demise for the film's only true hero. And I mean that with complete sincerity. Rick Flag is the only virtuous character here. Harley and Ratcatcher seemed as though they kinda wanted that information made public, but just folded to Bloodsport's blackmail scheme in the end. And this is where the film's critical flaw takes center stage.
Oh, that's just a taste of what's on that drive. I've uploaded it all to a secure server.
I don't know where he got the time or technology necessary to do any of that, but that's not the issue here.
Now, if you kill any one of us, or my
Door ever sees the inside of a prison, it goes public. If we all go free, it never has to see the light of day.
Let's get one thing straight. In James Gunn's Suicide Squad, the bad guys win in the end. That is what just happened here. If you really want to be charitable, you could call some of them anti-heroes, but not Bloodsport. Not the guy who shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet. No. So, having ironed out the semantics of the matter, the end of the film sees the supervillains gain leverage over their masters, allowing them to sidestep their multiple life sentences for the crimes they committed, and the US government to avoid a scandal as the information on the drive will remain secret indefinitely.
Look, I know Flag wanted to give the drive to the press, but we just saved the whole bloody city. We can't have it all.
What? What kind of logic is that? We're not going to do the right thing and hold the people responsible for this crime against humanity accountable because we did enough good by stopping the giant monster? The first time I saw this flick, that detail confused me, but I had enjoyed the experience so much that I shrugged it off and happily recommended it to friends. On repeat viewings, however, I cannot ignore this. It's as blatant of a writing flaw as you could get. The real culprits of this tragedy are allowed to escape the consequences of their actions because the supervillains who were working for them decided they could use the evidence of their crimes as blackmail material. James Gunn's Suicide Squad has a morality problem. Not only does this film, as well as many of his other works, revel in mass suffering, typically of innocent people not directly connected to the story being told, but it also flagrantly denies its characters and the audience a positive cathartic conclusion. In the end, the US gets to brush off the incident as having nothing to do with them, the villains get to walk free because of their leverage over Waller, Corto Maltese turns into a banana republic under the leadership of a violent, incompetent militia, and Rick Flag dies for the sin of standing up for free speech and governmental transparency.
Peacemaker. What a joke.